Maybe the depression that shows up after recovery is not a sign you're doing it wrong. Maybe it is a sign that your body finally feels safe enough to tell the truth. And the truth might sound like I'm relieved, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm grateful, I'm not who I was, and I don't fully know who I am yet. That, my love, is not failure. That is a human being coming back online.
Hey, beautiful soul, and welcome to Dear Body, I'm Listening, the podcast for women navigating chronic symptoms, invisible illness, and that daily dance between hope and exhaustion. If you've ever been told it's all in your head, well, this podcast is for you because your body is not lying and neither are you. Hi, I'm Donna Piper, movement therapist, Pilates instructor, and chronic illness navigator. After years of being dismissed, misdiagnosed, and doing everything quote unquote right, but still getting sicker, I created this space to tell our truth. Here we talk about swelling, brain fog, nervous system crashes, and the kind of symptoms that don't always show up on lab results. We're going to explore lymph, breath, movement, self-trust, latest research, books, relationships, basically everything. All from a place of compassion and honesty. This isn't about fixing your body. It's about finally being heard and getting some answers.
Hey friend, running low? Me too. I'm Donna. This is Dear Body, I'm Listening. We're in it together. Hey beautiful soul, welcome back to Dear Body, I'm Listening. I'm Donna, your host, and today's episode is for anyone out there who has spent years praying to feel better and then started to feel a little better, and then instead of feeling wildly relieved, felt sad, numb, flat, off, maybe even depressed. Which is such a mind game, right? Because nobody prepares you for that part. Nobody tells you that after years of fighting for your life, your energy, your answers, your sanity, you might finally get a little more traction and then think, why do I feel worse emotionally now that I'm doing better physically? So if that's where you are, come sit with me because I was expecting my depression symptoms to come much faster after my surgery than they did. So for those of you that are new here, I'm 55 years old. I got diagnosed at 53 with lipedema, MCAS, POTS, hypermobility EDS, and ME/chronic fatigue syndrome. So I just had lipedema removal surgery back in January 16th or 17th. I get the dates confused because my next surgery is either on the 16th or 17th of April. And I really thought the emotions were going to come in hot and heavy much sooner. So mine started just a couple weeks ago, and that would be around, I think I'm around 9 weeks out from post-op. So I just want to let you know that you're not failing recovery, you're not being dramatic, and you're definitely not ungrateful. Sometimes feeling better is the exact moment your body says, okay, now that we're not actively on fire, can we talk about everything that just happened? And honestly, that is not pathology being extra. Your nervous system just has some receipts. So like anything, if you've ever been in sort of any traumatic situation or a crisis situation, and then during the crisis, you feel available, you feel on it, and you're dealing with stuff. And then when the crisis is over, there's a lull. And really that's the time where all the emotions, things that have been unprocessed during really the moment of survival, where your body just can't do all those things at once. It's choosing one. It's choosing survival and not processing of emotions. And that's not to say you won't have emotions during crisis or have ups and downs, but there's that weird feeling where you're like feeling really good, maybe better than you ever have. And then emotionally, it's not syncing up. You feel really depressed, just not happy. You might even feel guilty, shame, or ungrateful. And that's what we're going to get in today as we get into our Real Talk segment. Real Talk, no gloss, just us. Now let's dive in. When you've been sick for a long time, years, not weeks, illness becomes a whole ecosystem. It shapes your schedule, it shapes your relationships, it shapes your identity. It shapes how much hope you allow yourself to feel, how much joy you have. It even shapes what you believe you're allowed to want. You become a woman who knows where the ice packs are, who can translate lab work that your doctors say are just fine, the woman who cancels last minute, the woman who is always recalculating energy, symptoms, food, sleep, swelling, flares, medications, reactions, pacing, fear, analyzing. So if you do X today, and if you have something to do in the future, say 3 days later, is that something that you can do now because you have this more important thing to do over here and you don't want to give yourself a flare? You might have scheduled flights, got yourself or went through insurance, you've gone through all of the steps to get surgery or get treatment. Maybe you have multiple treatments a week. So you're trying to figure all this out, which is overwhelming a lot on its own. And you do, right? And you're feeling better. And maybe it's not in one day, maybe not all at once, but enough to notice things have shifted. You're not having the same daily symptoms. You might have a little more strength, a little less pain, a little more capacity, a little more joy, a little more hopefulness of the future. And you'd think that moment you would feel like confetti, like, yes, oh my God, I feel amazing. And that's just what happened to me. Like, I was really, really at the worst height of my ME symptoms that I didn't know I had until a year ago, and I was in it. And that combined with the POTS, the hypermobility, the lipedema, and the MCAS, because they all have their own flares. And if you know, you know. And if you don't know, I have lots of podcasts on them. So pick one and listen to, but I talk about a lot the symptoms, the flares. And I finally had my lipedema reduction surgery. So I really thought with my energy level kind of being in the pooper that I would not have a great recovery. I would have to struggle with my energy even more. It'd be a whole thing. But the exact opposite happened. I had my surgery and I was like, had way more energy I've had in probably 7 or 8 years. It's been crazy. And I was waiting for the shoe to drop on that. Like, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to crash. That's where I'm going to like not feel like that's where I'm this mind numbing, body numbing pain and fatigue is going to take me over and my brain's going to stop working and I'm not going to have any energy. But it hasn't happened up until just a couple weeks ago. So I say around week 8 for me of post-op is where I started to have more depressed feels. I felt more sad. And it's not the fatigue, it's not some of the stuff. I've checked things out with myself, I've have a whole tracking system. Now I'm getting pretty good at knowing what is what going on with my body, but it took a few years to figure that out. Lots and lots of research and just self-experimentation, which I really wasn't a fan of because, being chronically ill for decades, there was always, well, let's try this and wait and see. And I'm like, I've needed an answer, 10 weeks ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I have to continue to wait and see. So that always bummed me out, but I've gotten at peace with that and better. So you would think like, okay, I'm cruising. I'm not going to have all these like stress response syndrome of having be in a crisis mode. Because, when you have chronic illness, your body is constantly, and if you have any of the ones that I've mentioned, specifically, your body is constantly doing the survival game. You are creating so much internal energy and things that you're not even aware of just to keep yourself breathing, alive. If you have hypermobility issues, just upright is a struggle or in one spot. If you have lipedema and ME/chronic fatigue syndrome, and you also have POTS and mast cell activation syndrome, that's just putting more and more stress on your system. So you get to this place where you're feeling better. I was feeling better, and there's been lots of women that I've talked to that have had this as well. So you're not alone if you're feeling this, but you know, sometimes it's like grief comes in like a wig, right? It's just like something that now you're putting on. But it's really because now you're feeling better. Your body could process what has happened to you. Now you can grieve with love and understanding from a different perspective. There's a lot of grief that happens, shame and guilt as well, when you have these symptoms, especially lipedema. And you might grieve the body you could have had, all the years of doing the diet, doing the exercise, doing all the right things, and your body's still not responding. And then doctors, friends, family, general public, strangers just looking at you or making comments like it's a lifestyle choice, like you're really not doing that. So there's a lot of grief that comes in that area, and I think I have a podcast about that. But this is when you're feeling way better. Now is the time to really start to grieve and feel like, "Oh, I was getting used to feeling that other way. I knew there was a different way. I knew it wasn't what I was feeling before and how life was, but I'm just getting used to it now that you're in a new stage. You're actually feeling better. It opens your eyes in a different level with a different pair of glasses. And you might be feeling years you lost, or a version of you that never got to exist, or because of not being able to walk for decades, you missed out on. If you have children or grandchildren, maybe that, or you didn't get to go on some hiking trip you wanted with your friends, or didn't get to be as social as you wanted because you always had to cancel plans, or you're afraid to make plans because you'd have to cancel. So all of those things, work you couldn't do, friendships that changed, and your body just kept trying to help out by keeping it alive, but then going in these flares and being an extra burden physically. You tried to fix your body and it just didn't really jive. And until one day, all the things that you've been putting in has changed it. And it's just really sadness. You might have some guilt for being able to feel better when maybe if you know someone that they're not in the same situation and they're not aligned with the same choices. And there's it's almost like a survivor's guilt. Like you're able to do this and other people aren't, or other people weren't, or they didn't have this and they're suffering. So it's a lot of projection, a lot of guilt, and a lot of shame, which is all makes sense. It's all part of the process. Unfortunately, with chronic illness, there's a lot, and at the beginning of before I knew I had all these diseases, I always was like, what am I getting wrong? Because I'm doing everything that, like, if anyone did like a tenth of what I've been doing, they would be feeling so much better. And why am I doing everything under the sun and just feeling worse? It's because I didn't know that I had connective tissue disorders. I didn't know how these things were linked. I didn't know I had lipedema. I didn't know, like, POTS is probably the one thing that, like, recognizable throughout my whole life and even in my mother, but no one diagnosed me and I didn't even know it was a thing. I just thought most people got dizzy when they stood up, or standing for a while and then all of a sudden I'd feel dizzy and nauseous and I need to lay down, or coming home from something or out in public, I'm like, "Oh my god, I just have to lay down. I have to go lay on the floor." So, even though I felt them and knew how to take care of them, they were never actually named. So, it took me a long, long time to get a diagnosis, and then once I got a diagnosis, I had the grief and the relief and the grief of having these diagnosis and, like, why did it take so long? And now that I'm feeling better, there is a void because a lot of what my daily life has become in the last 7 years since I've gotten worse and worse. A lot of things I used to do, it's not part of my routine anymore. So now that I have energy and I look around and I'm like, so what are habits? What do I do? What is my routine? What can I fill up with this? Because before it was I either couldn't, and then I was also then afraid if I did have a good day and I filled up on too much, then that would set me back weeks and weeks. And part of the ME/chronic fatigue syndrome protocol is to do 50% of what you think you can do, not including daily tasks like making food, taking showers, stuff like that. So all those things, especially food, shopping, cleaning, they suggest that you have someone do those for you. And you're just concerned on the 50% of like the things that you totally have to do in that day and think you can do. So
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
is also adjusting to that protocol. So I have a lot of things in my life that I used to do that I haven't been doing for the last 7 years. So it's a sadness of and almost a lost feeling and some flatness because I don't know what this life is like now. So I don't want to project too much in the future and I don't want to dwell too much in the past. I just want to honor that I have all this space and that space is freaking me out, right? So that could be you too. You could be in this place where like I feel better, I have energy, but I don't have the same date with my friends that I used to because, I've canceled for the last 3 years and they've moved on and I've changed. So would that even fit? Or I used to play tennis, or I used to play mahjong, all things that I did used to do. And then I haven't connected with those people. I just kind of pulled myself out of those communities because physically I couldn't. I knew I'd cancel. So I don't even know if they would, talk to me again. So there's all these things that go on that might give you some level of depression, cause confusion, and make you feel flat. Or there could be totally other things that maybe you missed some big moments in people's lives and you might be feeling sad about that now. So I caution you a couple things. If you have any regrets, try to process that as at the time our mind likes to go back and be like, oh, I must have felt good before this, so now I should feel bad about not going because now I feel good. No, the mind likes to do that in the past. It likes to go back to the past and make up stories, give you a hard time, you know make up implausible situations just to make you feel bad. So if you're dip into the past, I caution you to be realistic when you're feeling those ways, like, okay, and ask yourself questions. Could I have really done that physically at the time? And the answer is usually 90.999% no, you could not have. So instead of going back with how you're feeling now because you have more energy and making yourself feel bad, stop. Don't do that. Just honor that you wish you could have done it and honor the sadness and grief or whatever feelings you have, and then fully process them now and just feel them. So when I say fully process, I just mean take 2 minutes, set a timer, feel the sadness, feel the guilt, feel the whatever, and then replace it with something that you're feeling now. So if that situation came in front of you right now, what would you do? And that's different because at the time, you were doing the best you could in the past, and you can't redo it. Even though our minds think that we can, we're constantly jumping in the past, telling ourselves what we should have done, and then jumping in the future, telling us what we have to do. And it's hard to stay in this moment of clarity of just like, okay, what can I do? And what do I want to do? And what do I need to do? And those are all different questions with totally different answers. So honor your sadness, honor this lull you might be having, and then just start to look at like, okay, now what do I want to do? How do I want to describe my life, live my life? What do I want to add to it? And what do I need to test out? Maybe doing tennis right now, I know for me, would be way too much. And do I even want to do tennis anymore? Like, no. So, what I want to do, I want to do line dancing, and I have a class set up for this week. So, it may or may not happen. Doing line dancing may or may not be good for me, but I know I miss dancing. So, this is at the senior center. It's an easy lift for me, and it's something to put into my day. I have been enjoying my aqua rehab classes, so that's part of my schedule. I've had a lot of doctor's appointments, which I don't want to have part of my schedule, but that's, helping me pace because I can't fill it with other things. The next things I really need to figure out is I undereat incredibly low. And I used to enjoy cooking and baking, but I have a negative connotation with it because I was so tired to even go to the grocery store and then let alone prep. I wasted a lot of food thinking I can make more meals than I could have, and I had more energy. Even standing there, I didn't have the energy to cook, and then definitely didn't have the energy to clean. So I need to start to change my relationship with those little tea traumas that I had to put me in a situation where I feel like, oh my God, if I do that again, I'm going to go throw myself backwards. So that's a big one for me. And food has always been a struggle for me. I've always been an undereater. And then when my body looks like an overeater and I'd be judged for being an overeater, I don't have a great relationship with food, but I do have a couple really good podcasts about that. So look back into my catalog. And if you're like me with that, these will start you in a good direction. I haven't started my journey to totally fix it yet because I am going to go into my next surgery soon. So, with all that being said, having the lull, being depressed, having all these complex feelings is just part of the process, the other part of the chronic illness wheel.
Now it's time for the connective thread, where the story meets the science.
So now let's go into the research about this because I don't want this to sound just like, a theory or like this is what I felt like. I've seen it with when I was a active therapist with my patients with PTSD that were clinically diagnosed. And did crisis counseling as well. So in that crisis that I talked about before, there's like a cycle of being in these tense situations and then all these feelings that are kept unresolved afterwards. And some of the feelings come through how the neurotransmitters work, whether they produce anger, and also how the neurotransmitters get discharged if it becomes anger, sadness, numbness, cutting off. There's so many different, that's very complex. And we're not going to talk about that today, but that is part of the cycle of things. And so there's some research that doesn't have a neat label. Like no one said like, okay, I'm going to do a study on depression after recovery, which if anyone's out there doing any MA or PhD or PsyDs out there, this would be a great study to do. So I'm just throwing it out there if you know anyone that needs to devise a clinical study as part of their graduation or their profession, this would be great. So clinically, it's usually diagnosed as depression or an adjustment disorder sometimes. Most of the research is with survivorship of cancer. So chronic illness is obviously different, but there's not much research out there. I did a lot of research with the Google machine and different textbooks I've had and different things to kind of see what is out there, what's currently the word on the street and the psychological communities to see kind of if they've had any advancements since been in this field for the last 25 years. But really it comes around survivorship. And even though like I know some of the women with lipedema, I have talked to several, probably like 6, maybe more. And I've read more stories about this, so probably dozens and dozens of stories. That the 3rd to 6th day after their surgeries, that's when they had a lot of emotions. And there's been like 6 people I've had conversations with. They have different things come up that trigger it, but a lot of them have guilt about being able to have the surgery. There's this weird capacity thing that we all have, and this is kind of a little bit, don't have the research with that, but it's related to this because there is no research with chronic illness. Once you get better with chronic illness, once you start to feel a little bit better. And it's the same sort of survivorship guilt. You felt really bad, and there's tons, like there's 1 in 9 people affected by lipedema, and you start to feel better. So even though that's what you want to, and not everyone has it, but a lot of them have it, because this is a really emotionally heavy, this is a disease that sucks because you don't get a lot of support, got a lot of gaslighting, you got a lot of flack, you feel awful, and then there's not a lot of options. Surgery is expensive, very difficult. If you go through the insurance route, it's not impossible, but there's lots of ups and downs. And then finally you get through all of this mess. And so it does feel like surviving ship. Same with cancer. That diagnosis is different. However, there is processes that you have to go through. I helped my mom go through her lung cancer, and it wasn't as, they've known about it and all these things, and it wasn't as easy as you think to navigate that. And it usually isn't. Any sort of diagnosis you have isn't really, for most people. Some people, it's pretty straightforward. They get through the system pretty well. Other people, it's not such a straight road. So that's why I took the research, the only research I could find on survivorship, and that's what I'm talking about in this segment. So, survivorship research absolutely shows that depressive symptoms can show up or keep showing up after the worst part of the illness or treatment is over. In long-term cancer survivorship, some studies found new depression diagnosis still appearing 5 to 10 years later. And one big review found that long-term depressive symptoms in significant chunk of survivors overall. In other words, this is not just in the middle of the crisis thing, it can land later. So researchers for this point out a few big reasons why. And I'll leave all the research that I looked at to compile this in the show notes. But first, the biology of prolonged stress. So years of inflammation, poor sleep, uncertainty, pain, nervous system overload, and survival mode can leave a mark. So even when things improve, the brain and body don't always switch into peace overnight. Second, identity disruption. Chronic illness and or cancer, any of that, can change who you think you are, and recovery changes that identity again. So now you're not just healing physically, you're renegotiating your entire sense of self. Third, expectation whiplash. Thinking recovery will feel like going back to your old life is not really how it works, but sometimes it feels like standing in the rubble with a flashlight, right? Thinking, well, now what? So what are you going to do with all this stuff? My old life doesn't feel familiar, and now I'm here, but this isn't familiar either. So what happens? Then the fourth part, number 4, is fear. Fear of relapse, fear of losing progress, fear of trusting your body, fear of being thin, fear of getting what you want, fear of hoping too hard, fear of, oh my God, this is too good to be true. And the reality is, especially with lipedema reduction surgery, there is a significant number of women that it comes back and they do their second round of surgeries, sometimes even more. So surgery, even though it's great, and I'm a fan of it because it's helped me move and have less pain and got my energy back. But that doesn't mean that in 2, 5, 10, 20 years, I might have to get it again. So again, it's not permanent. So fear does live in there, like, oh shit, this feels good now. But what if I felt really crappy? I got what I want, but what if I can't handle it? So we don't want fear to be the heavy roommate. And fear can also absolutely feed into the depression, right? So fear of the future leads into the depression. None of those things have had to happen yet for you to feel depressed about it. And 5, the support often disappears too soon. When treatment ends or the crisis eases, people around you assume you're fine now. But emotionally, that can be the exact moment things to get louder inside. So if you've been sitting here thinking, I should just be happy and better, I should feel grateful, you are grateful. It has nothing to do with gratitude. But the one thing I want you to just know is that research backs up that there is this recovery syndrome where you do not feel good. You might go into a depression. And I invite you, instead of going totally in there, is to really examine what's going on. Know that's part of the process. Take some time to grieve these emotions, whether they're anger, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, and then put them into a perspective and put on your perspective, a new perspective glasses of like, okay, this is my life now. I'm uncomfortable because I'm not sure what the future holds. I haven't lived in this body before, even though maybe I've wanted to. So, what can I do to support myself to feel good? And again, it all comes down to safety and support. So now you're just giving yourself, you're repatterning all these things like from scratch. So, looking at the capacity now to be smaller, right? Like if you've had lipedema and you're smaller, that doesn't feel comfortable, even though you think that it should be automatic. For a lot of people, it takes some time to feel comfortable with a smaller body. So look into different sort of exercises, things you can do to help support that. Try to feel safe and supported in the body you have right now. And really try to honor and look for things that you would like to put into your life. And if you're like me, I found my thing is food. That's still kind of a big trigger. Like I'm getting worse and worse with my appetite not eating as the weeks go on. I need to fix that. So maybe it's something else for you. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's reconnecting with friends. Maybe it's something social. So look what maybe might be your big thing that's holding you back. And you don't have to go into it now, but just kind of recognize what are some areas that maybe you just need some more support, more love, and more understanding for yourself, to yourself around. And that can maybe help to slowly get you to have a better relationship with yourself or others in that area.
Mythbuster. Less hype, more help.
So let's bust some myths. First one, if I'm depressed now that I'm improving, I must be ungrateful. Heck no. You can be relieved and grieving. You can be healing and heartbroken. You can be better than you were and devastated by what it took. Those things are not opposites, they're roommates. Sometimes depression after recovery is not your body being negative or your mind being negative or you being some way. It's just your body being honest. You feel good, but you're grieving, you're dealing with something else that you didn't have. They're like, just hanging out as besties. So, as you would with your BFF, you're going to get them through the rough time. It's the emotional bill showing up after the medical emergency. And let me say this clearly for the women in the back, the front, and the ones listening from the bed, there's nothing wrong with you. You may just be coming out of survival mode in a world that expected you to bounce back like a motivational speaker, right? You're not getting ready for your next TEDx talk about how everything came together. You're just really dealing with real life. It took some time for this chronic illness to really, hopefully, you're listening to this beginning of your journey. So maybe it's not going to make you take so much time. That's why I talk so much about this. But if you're in midlife, like any of us in this stage, it's been decades coming, right? So it's not going to just turn around like that. Your energy might improve, but then you have to start building this new life, one that is in a smaller body that I know for me, I have always wanted. And so I'm a little freaked out that I'm getting it. So I have to really mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually be with this in a way that I have the capacity to be smaller so I don't set myself up for other triggers and depression and sadness along the way that, I'm going to have enough sadness, life stuff anyway. I don't need to add to it, right? So putting that pressure on you is not healing. That is just pressure and some lipstick, right? So we don't need that.
Feel good flow time, micro moves, macro reliefs. Let's breathe together.
So today in our feel good flow, let's do something gentle. Not productive, not performative, not fix it in 5 steps, just gentle. Place some hands on your body. You can cross your right hand over your left onto your heart. You can hold your shoulders, your belly, your legs, wherever you want, and just kind of feel yourself. Feel your hands on your body, and then feel your body supported by whatever is under you, a chair, a bed, a floor, and then breathe. And as you breathe, just let your chair hold you, or let your bed hold you, or let the floor hold you, and say quietly, I do not have to be joyous in order to be healing. And take a breath or two, and then say, my sadness does not cancel my progress. My sadness does not cancel my progress. And take another breath or two, and when you're ready, say, I am allowed to grieve as I heal. And then just notice, no forcing, no gold star for feeling better immediately, no gold star for not having an emotional crisis. We're not doing emotional CrossFit here. We're just enjoying the moment and being loving and supportive with ourselves, finding a new place to be, finding some safety within our new bodies, within that new burst of energy, so we can have a new baseline, a new support. And if it goes wonky, that's okay. It's not about going up, up, up. It's really about adjusting ourselves to a new baseline where we're feeling better about our lives, about our situation, about our chronic illness, and knowing at any moment things can change. But in this moment, we're honoring our grief and our sadness, and it is not canceling out anything else. Ultimately, we are practicing the truth, honesty, and dealing with what is in the moment, right here, right now.
This is shared education and lived experience, not medical advice, and is not meant to be. Check in with your body, check in with your clinician, and find out what fits your life.
So today's invitation is, maybe the depression that shows up after recovery is not a sign you're doing it wrong. Maybe it is a sign that your body finally feels safe enough to tell the truth. And the truth might sound like, I'm relieved, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm grateful, I'm not who I was, and I don't fully know who I am yet. That, my love, is not failure. That is a human being coming back online. If this episode hits you in a tender place, send it to a friend. If you also feel like they're in a tender place and they might need a little extra support and a little cheering on, or just a place where they feel seen and heard. And as always, you could share this podcast, subscribe to my podcast newsletters, or come find me at the Donna Piper. Or if you want to see my journey with lipedema, you can always come on and find me at the Lipedema_Donna. And if no one has told you this lately, you do not have to earn support by getting worse again. You deserve support and care right here, right now. As mentioned, I will leave all the research in the show notes. And again, this podcast is not medical advice. This is just my experience and wanting to share with you some of the things I wish someone would have helped me out, especially at the beginning of my journey. So until next time, dear body, I'm listening.
You've been listening to Dear Body, I'm Listening. Now it's time to remember to be gentle with your capacity, meet yourself where you are, and if this has helped, send it to a friend who also needs a soft reminder and a gentle place to land. If this episode made you feel even more seen, brought you clarity, or reminded you that you're not alone, please take a moment to rate, review, and send it to someone who needs that same reminder. You can find more tools, blog posts, and support over at donnapiper.com. And hey, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Got a question for me? Every month I do a listener coaching episode, and I'd love to hear from you. Send your questions, stories, or flare-up confessions to donna@donnapiper.com. And you just might hear your answer on the show. Until next time, dear body, I'm listening, and I am so glad that you are here.